Hello, everybody. My name is Geir Hasnes, and I am a graduate of Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim, Norway. And I graduated in electrical and electronical engineering. Have since been a research scientist for many years, and these days I am an associate professor at the Department of Engineering Cybernetics, and I'm lecturing in innovation. Already during my student days, I took an interest in G.K. Chesterton, and later on an interest in Sigrid Undset, and last, a big interest in Father Stanley Jaki. So I called my talk here, Chesterton, Undset, and Jaki, three Catholic intellectual giants. So, there. Here you can see Father Jaki, Sigrid Undset, and G.K. Chesterton. And in the peer review, they asked, they wanted to know a bit more about the likenesses between these three. And in fact, I will later on give the reason why I did not speak so much about the likenesses. And in fact, this speech is only a short introduction to what I consider a vast landscape, which will be the subject of further study, namely how the thoughts and works of G.K. Chesterton, Sigrid Undset, and Father Stanley Jaki are intertwined. Father Jaki died in 2009, and he was born 100 years ago. Sigrid Undset was born in 1882, and she converted to Catholicism 100 years ago. She also died 75 years ago, in 1949. And Chesterton, this year, will have, if he had lived, he would have reached his 150th anniversary. He was born in 1874, and he converted in 1922. We are here looking at St. Torfinn's Church in Hamar in Norway. This was Sigrid Undset's parish church, and the photograph was taken when Father Jaki and I visited it. We have many teachers of the church, like St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas, and now St. John Henry Newman. And I wonder about G.K. Chesterton, Sigrid Undset, and Father Stanley Jaki. Would they in the future be considered teachers of the church? I made this little table here to show how different they were. Chesterton wrote essays, novels, short stories, and poems, and he was enormously prolific. Sigrid Undset wrote mostly novels, but what is less known is that she was a hagiographer and wrote a lot of stories of saints. Father Jaki wrote about the philosophy of science, the history of science, and theology, and excuse me for not having included a lot more of things. Chesterton had his debut 26 years old in 1900, and Undset at 25 years old in 1907. Father Jaki, if you exclude his doctoral thesis, he debuted in 1966. He was 42 years old. So luckily, he kept it going for many years after the age of Chesterton and Undset when they died. Chesterton had 80 books published in his lifetime and 80 more books published since. And there is an enormous amount of material waiting for publication. Undset had 40 books published in her lifetime, and there has come 18 books since. Father Jaki actually got to publish 84 books and 5 more have come after he died. I know that this number is higher than other people consider it to be, but I have not included those 32-page booklets in it. The relationship between them is that Chesterton and Undset met. She wrote to Chesterton, asked to come to see him, and wanted to take his experiences with the Catholics in England, bring it to Norway. So Sigrid Undset also translated Chesterton. And the thing about Father Jaki was that he wrote on both Chesterton and Undset, and he also had Undset translated into English and published on his publishing house. Because both Chesterton and Undset were converts. Chesterton converted at the age of 48, and with regard to Catholicism, he became an apologist. The same with Undset. She was a very militant Catholic in a Norwegian Protestant country. So Chesterton's personal library has been spread for all the winds, I'm sorry to say. While Sigrid Undset's library was kept at her home for 48 years after she died. It was just kept there until the state and the local museum bought the whole estate. In the meantime, the books had not been touched. And Father Jaki's papers and library is largely kept at Seton Hall. They all have biographers, they all have societies, and I think the number of biographies will grow and grow because, for instance, like Father Jaki has written in his books on them, that most of the biographies do not take proper, well, they don't really consider their Catholic side very much. And well, we are waiting for more biographies on Jaki, for more material. Chesterton was enormously prolific, as you may know, and this is one of my shelves in my Chesterton collection, which was the basis, of course, for my bibliographical study of him. And Chesterton was also a Catholic author. Here we can see his rosary, which is kept in the church of St. Teresa in Beaconsfield, in the office there. And also here we see the Chesterton stained glass window in the church of St. Teresa. And they have a plaque here which says that the church was completed as a memorial to Gilbert Keith Chesterton, an illustrious parishioner, through the generosity of his friends and admirers throughout the world. Father Jaki said he discovered Chesterton in 1951. He only read one chapter of Orthodoxy and forgot the whole thing. But in 1973, he began to seek him up. And, for instance, it resulted in a book on Chesterton in 1986, and also several articles. In the book Chesterton, A Seer of Science, Father Jaki had worked through a lot of more or less biographical studies and lamented them because they did not say anything special about Chesterton's relation to science. And now I think that it is curious to know that while Father Jaki was living at Pannonhalma in Hungary, this guy, Olaios A. Elred, delivered a doctoral dissertation on Chesterton in 1943. So he might have slumped to know a little bit about Chesterton, but didn't really take Chesterton seriously until the 70s. And his book, A Seer of Science, is full of praise for Chesterton. Father Jaki also found out about Sigrid Undset. He was interested in converts, and by chance, he reread the last chapter of the book to the left in English translation. Etapper means stages on the road. Came out in 1933, and it was translated into English, and one of the chapters were reply to a parish priest, which Sigrid Undset wrote in 1930. That was his first, how can I say it, his first revelation of the depths of Sigrid Undset's Catholicism. And later on, he found this book to the right, Et kvinnesynspunkt, which is a female point of view, which was published in 1919, at which point Sigrid Undset had accepted that Catholicism is the truth. And the last chapter was called Postscript, and Father Jaki found it so important that he included it in his book, Sigrid Undset's Quest for Truth. What is unknown for most is that this great Nobel Prize-winning novelist, Sigrid Undset, was also a hagiographer. I've included just a few of the books on Saint Olaf, the King of Norway, who brought Christianity to Norway, of Saint Halvard. He is the patron saint of Oslo, the capital of Norway. There is a book translated into German, Die Heilige Angela Merici. There is another, it was also translated into German, about Saint Sunniva, a Norwegian saint who had arrived from Ireland. This is her last book, Caterina of Siena. It has also been translated into English. And there is a book she wrote for a series of portraits of saints at Sheed & Ward, the Catholic publisher in London, the Saga of Saints. In this series, Chesterton and Belloc also contributed to a book on English saints. Also, what is less known, even in Norway, is that Chesterton was Undset's favorite author. And Undset actually paid her stepdaughter, after she had converted to Catholicism, to translate the Catholic Church and Conversion from 1926 into Norwegian. It was published in Norwegian in 1929. And Sigrid Undset also paid for the printing. Catholicism did not really yield much income in Norway. And Sigrid Undset told her publisher that this was the best book ever, The Everlasting Man by Chesterton. And she actually demanded that it should be translated into Norwegian. And he refused to pay for the translation, so she took 1 year off and translated it herself. And Father Jaki actually said in his book that he would not have really gone into this last big research project of his on Sigrid Undset. About me, he said, without meeting him by pure chance, as worldly wisdom would have put it, I would hardly have thought of going beyond and making this translation of the reply to the parish priest. So at the 25th annual Chesterton Conference at the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul in Minnesota, 2006, he was scheduled for the first day at 10:30, and I was scheduled at 1 p.m. His speech was Dickens and Darwin, two giants who never met, not even in the mind of the giant called Chesterton. It has later been published, actually. And I gave a speech which Dale Ahlqvist named Trials and Triumphs of a Chesterton Bibliographer. So there we were going to meet. So luckily I found I had a photograph of Father Jaki when he spoke on Darwin and Dickens, and he also spoke on the exact sciences. I have included his visiting card and the book catalogue because Father Jaki paid for coming to the conference by selling his books there. And because he was selling his books, and I think also for other reasons, I was told that he never attended other people's lectures, only his own. So I was challenged by that. So I thought, how can I make him listen to my speech? So between our two lectures, if you should call it that, we had lunch. And then I passed him up and I said that it was very interesting what you spoke, but you were wrong about the exact sciences. Oh, I was, he said. And I said, yes, because there is one more exact science, which you didn't include. And what might that be? He said. And I said, bibliography. Oh, very clever, very clever. And then I said that I had heard that he didn't attend other people's lectures. Oh, so my reputation has caught up with me. Yeah, but I think you should go to mine. And why that? He said, oh, because I'm going to tell the Chesterton Society that they should not be so much involved in Gnosticism. So here is one point from my many slides in my speech. Well, bibliography is an exact science, and you should beware of Gnosticism. Actually, this slide here was Chesterton fat. I had, at the time, tried to find out when every photograph of Chesterton had been taken. So I could conclude that he was not really fat for such a long time as was stated. And I also said that I don't think you shall use his so-called fatness to balance his fantastic work by his mind, because that is Gnosticism. And after that, at the next meal, Father Jaki sat down with me and asked, because he knew that I was a Norwegian, he wanted me to speak about Sigrid Undset. So that's where this began. And I've also included this because Father Jaki also spoke on smaller parallel sessions at the conference, and here he spoke on intelligent design. And it was quite a controversy at the time because intelligent design was in the wind, we used to say in Norway. It was very popular among Catholics, and he was, of course, completely against it. So I was told that people came crying out of that session. And it is a bit interesting to me also because I overheard that at the table, people used to queue up to him and ask him questions, and he answered by, I have written about that in this book. Have you read it? Well, buy it then. Next question. So I think he must have been quite used to having to answer questions which people could read answers to by themselves. But the thing is that I said that when he spoke about his translation and publication of Letter to a Parish Priest, I said that if you want to come to Norway to do research on Sigrid Undset, I will take you there. And sorry. And so Father Jaki went to Lillehammer in 2006 and 2007 to do research on Sigrid Undset. And here you can see the farmhouse in the middle was the original farmhouse. The farmhouse to the right was bought for the money she earned on Kristin Lavransdatter. And here Sigrid Undset made her own writing room, and on the second floor is her bedroom. And we see also that there is a house on the right. On the left, I mean, it was an original part of the estate, and after Sigrid Undset returned, she had stayed in the United States for 5 years during the war. And then when she came home, she brought 4,000 books with her, which she had amassed in the US during those years. So Father Jaki did not really know what to see when I brought him to Lillehammer. I don't think I had made it clear to him. So he thought he would only be seeing the remnants of where she once lived. But of course, the whole miracle of it all is that her book collection was rescued when she fled from the Germans. She fled, and her friends took all the books and hid them under the floors of churches. And after she died, it was all left there for 48 years until the state bought the whole estate and turned it into a museum. And so here in May 2007, you can see Father Jaki and me, and behind this window, Sigrid Undset wrote Kristin Lavransdatter. This is Sigrid Undset's living room, and you see Father Jaki was walking around, drinking it in, and to the left there is the entrance to a writing room. We took a lot of delight in this, that Father Jaki discovers that Sigrid Undset kept Luther's collected works on the upper shelves, so that they should be out of reach for the children. They should not have access to dirty literature. She said that. So I laughed a lot about that. And here you can see Sigrid Undset's writing room with Belloc and Benson and Chesterton behind her back. Actually, she said that she was writing with the English Catholics in her back, supporting him the way we see it, say it in Norwegian. And so a librarian had been hired to catalogue Undset's collection, and she would assist Father Jaki during his research on Undset. And also here, he not only studied Sigrid Undset's books, but he also studied her belongings, and here in the room where she wrote Kristin Lavransdatter. He also had a look in her bedroom with a prayer stool. I think I could go on forever speaking about Sigrid Undset just as I could about the Chesterton. But this will, of course, be something that you will all have to go further into when you become acquainted with Sigrid Undset. So I took Father Jaki up to Mesnali Catholic graveyard, and here is kneeling in front of Sigrid Undset's grave, where she wrote, or had written on her cross, and Mary said, "Behold, I am the servant of the Lord." And Father Jaki thought this piece ought to continue to be read, and it might have been his only act if he hadn't taken the trip to Norway through moral crisis to Catholicism, replied to a parish priest. And his own book, Sigrid Undset's Quest for Truth, begins with a quote from Chesterton: "What is worth doing is worth doing badly." But I don't think it was a bad job at all. I have to include that this book here was published for the official opening of Bjerkebekk, May 20th, 2007. So Father Jaki and I came just before it was opened for the public, so we were able to roam freely at Bjerkebekk and have access to all the books. And Father Jaki actually took time to mention that, but at least some of them, all the secular Sigrid Undset experts of Norway, some of them may have second thoughts about their notion of Sigrid Undset's spiritual heritage as they paged through a vast panorama of illustrations, Sigrid Undset's hjem, Bjerkebekk I bøkenes verden. My little contribution Jaki says, to that splendid work was to persuade its redactors at my first visit there to make the most of Geir Hasnes' vast fund of bibliographical expertise for the presentation of books by Belloc Benson, Chesterton, and others as illustrative of Sigrid Undset's path to Rome as a journey from moral morass to mores connected with Christian holiness. And in a way, it's true, although it's humbling. When they had started this project on the book collection of Sigrid Undset, they had taken very little into consideration all her Catholic books and her relation to Catholic authors. So I actually became part of the project and pulled out a lot of things which I had to write about myself in this book, thanks to Father Jaki. So it is so great to know that I was a part of his last huge project. And I can then end with that Chesterton, Undset, and Jaki were different people. And Sigrid Undset said, if every convert who returned to the Catholic Church would describe his path to Rome, it would probably seem that hardly two of them have taken the same road. It is not surprising to those of us who have accepted the Church assertion that it is the pillar and foundation of truth, that there are as many ways to it as there are human minds. My reasons to convert, 1936, also included in full in Sigrid Undset's quest for truth. So, were these three people teachers of the Church? I think the research has barely begun. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Geir. We appreciate that. That was a very interesting talk, and it was so neat to see the pictures of you with Father Jaki and to hear of your experiences with him. And I just want to make sure that we read your bio here for the recording. Geir Hasnes is an associate professor of engineering cybernetics at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim, Norway. His research is particularly dealing with the philosophical and conceptual basis for the description languages and processes of systems development, in short, with innovation. He authored a recent 3-volume bibliography on G.K. Chesterton and received the American Chesterton Society's Chesterton Lifetime Award in 2006. He also assisted Father Jaki, as you saw in his talk, during his research on Sigrid Undset. Thank you so much. What a treasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on then to Dr. John Long. He's a senior lecturer in physics and engineering at Deakin University in Geelong, Australia. He has undergraduate qualifications in physics and philosophy from the University of Michigan in Flint, and originally trained with General Motors Corporation in materials testing, so industrial research experience as well. His research includes engineering applications of advanced materials, as well as education in engineering and science. He's a co-editor-in-chief of the International Journal on Innovations in Online Education, a very important area to be working in these days. A member of both the Society of Catholic Scientists and ISCAST Australia. He has studied Father Jaki's writings for over 30 years. And he's going to be giving his talk. You can see the title here. Can what cannot be measured exactly happen exactly? More on Jaki's criticism of the Copenhagen interpretation in quantum theory. Over to you, Dr. Long. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Is it pronounced Tsankos?
Yes, correct.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction. I wish to quite sincerely thank the committee who is organizing this conference for giving me this opportunity to give this paper. You know, it's 4:30 in the morning my time, And I've been up all night. I was there for the opening of the Congress. I've been up all night while you were at mass and at lunch. I wasn't game to lie down or have a sleep or sit in an easy chair and rest my eyes because I was afraid I'd fall asleep and wouldn't wake up again. So I sat here at my desk and kind of dozed a bit, set an alarm on my phone.
Oh, goodness.
And here I am. And so when this is done, I'm probably perhaps a bit bleary at the moment. I might end up just going to bed when this is all done, but we'll see. We'll see how we go. I am getting a bit of a second wind. Um, you sort of stole my thunder with your talk, with your morning talk, because we talked about the same sort of thing, quantum mechanics, Copenhagen interpretation. So maybe I won't spend too much time on the physics of it all and get into more what Father Jaki had to say and some of my own thoughts on the idea. But I guess before we do that, I need to keep an eye on the time. Let me just tell a bit about what my story is. Mine is a rather unusual story, to be honest. I grew up in southern Michigan. As was said, I did my undergraduate training in Flint at University of Michigan. I completed a double major in philosophy and in physics, and then I subsequently trained in material science. Look, I confess, because I have an undergraduate training in philosophy, I only know enough philosophy to be dangerous, but it's enough so that I can read Father Jaki's books and more or less understand them. Look, my scientific training is not particle physics. It's not cosmology. It's materials. And I've spent, the better part of my career in laboratories measuring stuff. So I'm not really what you would call a high-end physicist. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a historian. I sometimes call myself a humble country physics guy who just happens to have found Father Jaki's writings informative and inspiring. Okay, so how did it all start? Well, this slide sort of shows where it all started. 1988, I began my doctoral studies. I wound up in Australia, so here I am. A long story. I was beginning my doctoral studies at Monash University in Melbourne. And about that time, I literally stumbled on Father Jaki's review of Stephen Hawking's book, A Brief History of Time. It was in The Wanderer. And it just happened that my father subscribed to it, and I picked it up and read it and went, oh, this is interesting. Now, at the time, Hawking's book, it was a big deal. It lined all the bookshops. All the bookshops I hung around had these floor-to-ceiling displays of A Brief History of Time. And this went on for a long time. It was reprinted. It came out in an illustrated version and so on. So a big, big, big deal. And I happened to read Father Jaki's review of this book, and the title was Evicting the Creator. Father Jaki was savage. He tore it to pieces. And I thought to myself on reading the review, who is this guy? Who's this guy, Jaki, who dares to criticize the great Professor Stephen Hawking, perhaps the most well-known physicist on the planet. So that was the beginning for me. I read it and I looked at the end of the review. Oh, he's written some other books. One of them was called Absolute Beneath the Relative. Well, that sounded kind of interesting, so I bought it and read it and went, huh. And quite frankly, I've been reading and studying Father Jaki's writings ever since. And I still have a long way to go. I think I've read maybe 30 of his books, and I'm still going. What's sad, of course, is that I'm doing it on my own. So it's a bit lonely down here in Australia. And so I treasure this opportunity to interact with other admirers of Father Yaki's work. Okay, 1992, I was engaged, and my fiance and I went home to Michigan to meet the family. And I was a crazy nerd at the time, a bit starry-eyed perhaps. I wrote to Father Yaki and said, "Can I meet you?" And he said, "Yeah, that's fine." So off we went to Princeton. When I was supposed to be taking my fiance to Disneyland, I took her to universities, and by some miracle, she still married me. Anyhow, the two of us met Father Yaki in Princeton, and uh, I think we had lunch with him, and I made it clear to him that I admired what he was doing, and kind of thought it'd be cool to do what he did. Well, he had some advice for me, and this was his advice to me at the time. He said this to my face. First of all, finish my doctorate, get a real job, get married, and raise a family. He didn't tell me to get a haircut, but close enough. He said, "Kid, nobody's going to pay you to do what I do." Well, if he were alive today, I could say to him, well, mission accomplished. I did get married, and we've been married now for over 30 years. We did raise a family, 5 kids, and I have a real job, and I'm still there. Okay, a couple of months later, Father Yaki visited Australia. This would be July 1992, and he gave some lectures. He was in Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, and Wagga Wagga. And I attended his lecture in Melbourne at the offices of the National Civic Council. Surprisingly, he remembered who I was. Interesting also, at that meeting, Father Yaki met the other intellectual who's had a huge impact on me, the Australian Catholic layman named Bob Santamaria, who also is no longer with us. Mr. Santamaria probably was equal in intellect to Father Yaki. And like Father Yaki, he was a fighter. He wouldn't back down from a fight. And those two intellectuals had a huge impact on me. And quite frankly, they're a good part of the reason why I'm still a Catholic. Okay, we got to get on to the actual talk itself. Look, I don't want to go super deep into quantum mechanics because it's already been done. But okay, I'll try to be brief. Father Yaki wrote a lot about this interpretation of quantum mechanics. He wrote it about heaps. And in the manuscript that I put together for this conference, I made a little table of the places that I know where he wrote about this in some detail. So I'm just going to review it and then make some comments of my own at the end. The bottom line of quantum mechanics is that, okay, at the atomic level, particles have wave-like properties. Now, interesting thing about waves is that they, when they interact, when waves interfere with each other, they set up resonances, and the resonances are quantized. This is where the word quantum comes from. They set up harmonics that are integer multiples of some fundamental. And so I've got some pictures here of some harmonics, and interestingly enough, also a great example of where quantitative numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 show up in classical physics is in acoustics and in music. So musicians know all about this. You have a fundamental, and you have your higher harmonics and your overtones, and the frequencies are an integer multiple of the fundamental. Interestingly enough, well then, part of what quantum mechanics came across was that, all right, it turns out that matter also has wave-like properties. Now, we only notice it for really, really, really small particles, and they got to be really, really moving fast. But they do it, and this is now quite routine. And this allows electron microscopes to take incredibly detailed high magnification pictures. And so there's a photograph here that I took a while ago. I still find electron micrographs of bugs to be both disgusting and fascinating at the same time. So photograph of a bug, and yeah, you can see it in detail. It looks like something out of a horror movie. Interestingly enough, Niels Bohr, put forward the Bohr model of the atom, got a Nobel Prize for it, and then it went out from there. The next step was quantum mechanics, where again, electrons around an atom, set up standing waves, the wavy type stuff. And this is now routine, and we apply this stuff all the time. But the point about the quantum mechanical model of the atom is that things get messy. Electrons are now seen as waves, and instead of putting your finger on a particle like a little tiny dot, you have to talk about probability distributions. And we use probabilities then to describe the motion. Now, fine. Interestingly enough, we can predict energy states pretty precisely with quantum mechanics, and we do it all the time. But the Heisenberg uncertainty principle says, well, we can predict energy states, but you can't pin down where or how fast at the same time. Okay, fine. And again, this is because of the wave nature of particles. Now, this is where things get interesting philosophically, because how do we interpret this? How do we interpret this? And this is what's become now known as the famous Heisenberg, the famous Heisenberg uncertainty principle and the Copenhagen interpretation. It's the one you most often read about in physics books. This interpretation takes our inability to measure some aspects of atomic particles and attribute that to reality itself. The upshot is that this interpretation says that quantum mechanics proves that ontological cause and effect are invalid or otherwise meaningless. And again, it became known as the Copenhagen interpretation. Here's a bunch of quotations on this slide from various physics books. Hawking himself said in Brief History of Time, the uncertainty principle signaled an end to the dream of a theory of science, a model of the universe that would be completely deterministic. One certainly cannot predict future events exactly if one cannot even measure the present state of the universe precisely. Father Jaki himself used to like to quote Heisenberg himself from German. And so this shows up in a number of his books. Since all experiments are subjected to the laws of quantum mechanics and thereby to the uncertainty equation, the invalidity of the law of causality is definitely proved by quantum mechanics. Okay, Father Jaki criticized this over and over and over and over again. And here's just some of the quotes that I've come across from some of his books. It's not all of them. It's just some of the better ones. In his review of Hawking's book, Father Jaki says pretty bluntly right up front, Professor Hawking philosophizes from the start and does it badly. Maybe another one that I might read is once the scientific inability to measure reality with complete exactitude was given a philosophical garb, it led with philosophical exactness to the inability to grasp and hold reality. Reality's place was taken by chance, not the chance that stands for ignorance, like maybe you might have in statistical mechanics, but which stands for a philosophical ghost residing in the shadowy realm between being and non-being. Classic Jaki. His way with words. Let's see here. Interestingly enough, what's the problem? Interestingly enough, Father Jaki says, well, you got your logic wrong. Simple as that. It's a logical fallacy, a non sequitur. And he says this over and over again, but it says the upshot of the Copenhagen interpretation is what became the title of my talk. If something cannot be measured exactly, it can't happen exactly. And Father Jaki says, well, that's a non sequitur. It does not follow from that. It does not follow that because we have operational limitations, as was said before, in our ability to measure, that there's limitations in ontological reality itself. And Father Yaki puts his finger right on it and calls it the fallacy of equivocation. I looked up the fallacy of equivocation in my second year logic textbook. Equivocation is used when you have the same word in an argument, but the word has more than one meaning. And so you have like a double meaning. Determined, used by the Copenhagen interpretation, has two senses. One refers to measurement, and the other one refers to causation. Father Yaki says this is the problem, and he says it over and over and over again, to the point now where I can spot it, in a heartbeat every time I get a new book. There it is. Yep, there it is. You can see it. Okay, let's move on. Interestingly enough, Father Yaki, and it looks like he was right. Looks like he was right. What are the consequences of the Copenhagen interpretation? All right, I'll read this one out from another one of his books. Once that non sequitur is accepted, no further objection can be made to the claim that the physicist can literally create matter, indeed an entire universe, out of nothing. And since the ontological distance between non-being and being is infinite, it is no greater a feat to create an entire universe than to produce a mere fraction of the atomic nucleus out of nothing. And out of this, he had in his sights what's now become known as the multiverse theory. Hawking seemed to believe in the multiverse theory, and other people believe in the multiverse theory. Yaki called it pulling a rabbit out of a hat. He said that more than once or twice. Well, again, keeping an eye on the time, where do we see the multiverse theory? Well, quite frankly, we see the multiverse in comic books, and we see it on television. So the Starship Enterprise has gone to the multiverse a few times. Captain Kirk got stuck in a parallel universe in an episode or two, and now even the great British hero Doctor Who looks like he's heading into the multiverse as well. And who hasn't seen Men in Black? And here's our little cat. The galaxy is on Orion's belt. So, look, multiverse theory makes for great science fiction. And I have boys, and we've watched our share of all of these shows. Great fun, great fun. But in reality, no, no, no. Now, interestingly enough, important. This has also been said a few times now in this conference and also in the previous Yaki symposiums. This philosophy is his, which Father Yaki called moderate realism. It's important, and for me as a practicing material scientist, this is important. What are our philosophical assumptions behind physics? Well, these statements come out of Yaki's book, The Relevance of Physics. Here's our assumptions. The physical universe really exists. What we perceive of the physical world is real and not a product of the mind. We can use our senses to find out real, trustworthy information about physical reality. Physical reality and the universe are both rational and consistent, and we can use logic and mathematics to learn how nature works, and this logic is reliable. Now, in material science now, we've got electron microscopes that are powerful enough to image right down pretty much to the atomic level. So this image that I have up here is dislocations in a titanium alloy. That little bar there, half a micron, or about 500 nanometers. And you can see some dots kind of in the middle, kind of in the center here. You can see some little dots. Those are the positions of individual atoms. We're getting to the point now where we can just about image rows of atoms. Now you talk to the guy, a fellow named Pavel, who took that picture, and you ask him, well, we're using quantum mechanical effects to take that picture. Are those atoms real? His reply will be something like, "You're darn right they're real. I worked my guts out to get this picture.
Mhm.
Don't be silly. The cosmologists, perhaps, and the particle physicists, notwithstanding, particle physics and cosmology are probably, I'm going to be real scientific here, a tiny slice of all the applications that we do in quantum theory. And even the mobile phone that's sitting in your pocket is packed with quantum mechanics. And it's really quite real. It's really quite real. Interestingly enough. All right. I can see I'm just about out of time. I'm going to wrap up my talk this way. Interestingly enough, realism to me is important. Not philosophically. You listen to the talks about Aquinas and causation, primary and secondary causes. It's all kind of abstract. But this is recent, very recent. Interestingly, I'm now noticing sort of non-realistic philosophies creeping into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. It's been going into the arts. It's been going into the arts for a couple of generations. Been in education for a long time. But for a long time, engineering and physics and mathematics were kind of immune to it. And that's partly why I stopped studying philosophy years ago and swapped over to physics, because I thought I could sink my teeth into physics more so than I could into philosophy, where we spent a lot of time doing what Father Jaki said, talking about talk. Well, lately we've been hearing now about decolonializing STEM, and there's talk now about indigenous ways of knowing. This is a big thing now in Australia. I think it's happening in Canada. It's in Africa. Maybe it's in the United States now. I don't know. But the idea is to take they say non-Western, basically, ways of thinking and somehow incorporate that into, well, it's been in education for a long time, but now it's creeping into physics and engineering. And this concerns me. This very, very much concerns me. Interestingly, decolonializing engineering and physics and mathematics is becoming the buzzword. Look, I work with a lot of engineers, and engineers spend a lot of their time, among other things, trying to keep the lights on. And if we decolonialize engineering, in my view, in the long run, we're going to be in trouble because realism forms the philosophical basis of engineering as well. And if you erode that, what's going to happen to engineering? You might have a really hard time keeping the lights on. Interestingly enough, and I'm trying to see to it that I finish on time. Try and wrap this up then with some conclusions. My manuscript that'll be published in the proceedings has a section on further work, and interestingly enough, some of the things that Dr. Tsenkos said was also said to me by reviewers of my manuscript. So this is important. If somebody could pick apart some of the ideas of primary and secondary causes and quantum mechanics, that's worth a master's degree. If someone could go deeper into things like Bell's theorem or Schrodinger's cat and look at it from the point of view of realism, there's a master's degree in that as well. And if somebody could do both, that's worth a Ph.D. So plenty of work then to keep physicists and philosophers alike busy. To be quite honest, I would like to see Father Jaki's thought and this idea of modern realism incorporated into education, because I can assure you right now it is not. Constructivism, German idealism, constructing your own knowledge, that's the talk of how education is done these days. I would love to see realism incorporated in education. I would love to see the study of realism, and I mean like Aquinas, expanded from Christian theology schools into STEM education. The Catholic and the Christian universities are pretty good at being champions of philosophical realism, but it tends to be kind of in the seminaries. It tends to be in the training of priests and ministers, and it doesn't seem to get much further. But look, if we're talking about non-realistic philosophies creeping their way into natural sciences and engineering, STEM is going to need realism to be put back. And this is an opportunity for universities like Seton Hall and places like the University of Divinity in Melbourne. A whole new application, really, for the realism and the philosophy that you teach to your religious and to your lay ministers and so on. There's an opportunity there. Let's expand the study of realist philosophy from the theology courses and get them into STEM, because quite frankly, I think in the future, STEM's going to need it.
Amen.
In my final word, I'm going to quote something that was pretty profound to me when I first read it, and I reckon it's pretty applicable now. I really do. This is the final sentence, basically, from Gilbert Chesterton's book, Heretics. And the way things are going, this is prophetic. This is prophetic. So let's read it out. At the end of Heretics, Chesterton wrote, "We shall be left defending not only the incredible virtues and sanities of human life, but something more incredible still, this huge, impossible universe that stares us in the face. And we scientists are painfully aware of this. We shall fight for visible prodigies as if they were invisible. We shall look on the impossible grass and the skies with a strange courage. We shall be of those who have seen and yet have believed." Father Stanley Jaki certainly did this. And those of us who count as his students should do the same. And we really ought to be among those leading the charge. Thank you. Stop sharing here.
Okay. Thank you for that excellent presentation and the kangaroo. Yeah, appreciate that very much. I particularly appreciate your electron microscope slide with the pictures of atoms and your comment to philosophers. Of course they exist.
I work with a lot of material scientists, and of course those atoms exist. It's hard work. They're not going to do it otherwise. And it's expensive.
Thank you for your realistic view of things and your practical knowledge. And meetings like this are doing hopefully just what you're saying, rallying the troops to fight for realism.
I've been studying Father Jaki by myself for a long time, and quite frankly, I'm very, very grateful to be able to attend, by teams, this conference. This is well worth staying up all night for, and I hope that we can continue this. I really do. I have spoken in Australia to a few people about Father Jaki. I know some other admirers. It's mostly his theological and his philosophical writings, but not much on his science. He had a lot to say about physics, and it's really cool. It's really cool stuff. All right, I'll shut up then.
It is. No, thank you so much, and thank you for staying up all night.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.